Divorce sucks, but it doesn't have to define you. You're not alone, and you're not powerless, even when everything feels like it's falling apart. Welcome to The Difficult Divorce, a podcast that cuts through the drama and confusion to give you clarity, confidence, and straight-up real talk. Hosted by Molly Rosenblum, family law attorney, fierce advocate, and the one you want in your corner when it all hits the fan. Each week, we'll break down the legal, the emotional, and the unexpected so you can take back control. Because smart decisions start with straight answers.
Welcome back to The Difficult Divorce. I'm your host, Anthony, and I'm joined here today by Molly Rosenblum, founding attorney of the Rosenblum Allen Law Firm, based in Las Vegas. Today, we're talking about one of the more common questions people ask us before they file for divorce, and one of the easiest ways to accidentally hurt your case. Should you move out before filing for divorce? Molly is here to explain why this decision is rarely as simple as it feels. All right, so let's go ahead and get right into it. Molly, people are often desperate to lower the tension at home. Why is moving out before filing such a big deal legally?
Hey, Anthony, it's so great to be back with The Difficult Divorce, and today we are talking about such an important topic in Nevada divorce law, and that is moving out of the house before your case is filed or even while the case is ongoing. And this is such a big topic in Nevada divorce cases and probably in divorce cases across the country because it's usually done emotionally and not strategically. I would tell you 1 in 2, maybe every 3 cases, the question comes up, should I move out? Should I stay? And this is usually because people want peace, they want space, they want relief, they want to get out of the situation and the discomfort that getting divorced causes. And in Nevada divorce cases, moving out early can affect custody. It can affect your ability to move back into the home, and it creates a power imbalance early in the case. Once you leave the house, you may unintentionally create a new normal that the court is later going to look at and use to set the tone for what happens going forward. So moving out, can you do it? Sure. But you really need to consider the impact it is going to have on custody and on the divorce overall.
Okay, so let's talk about custody. What happens if a parent moves out and the children stay behind?
Yeah, so in custody cases, this is where we see people get burned the most, is when they leave the house thinking, I want peace, I want quiet, we'll figure it out later, I just have to get out. And that is where people get totally screwed. So, of course, we would never recommend somebody stay in an unsafe home. If the home is unsafe, if your physical danger or your children's are physical well-being or they're in danger, we are definitely recommending that you leave the home. But if it's uncomfortable, that's a different situation. So danger is one situation, discomfort is another. And if you leave the home because it's uncomfortable and your children remain there, you may be creating a status quo where you're giving the other parent primary custody without even thinking about it. And depending on how much time passes between the time you leave the home to the time you end up in court, that could create what's called a status quo situation. And the court may say, hey, you've been doing this status quo where you don't live with the kids for 6 months or a year. And so why should we change that? That's disruptive to your kids. So even though you're moving out to get peace, even though you feel like I can't stay with this person, I don't want to be in the same house with them, again, unless it's unsafe, we recommend that you definitely do not move out, see a court, talk to an attorney before moving out of the house.
That makes sense. If the kids are doing all right without you directly involved in their lives, because maybe you live somewhere else, the court could assume that the best course of action is to keep the status quo. But what about the house itself? A lot of people worry that moving out means they've given up their house. Is that true?
Yeah, this question we get quite often. So a lot of people think if I move out of the house, I'm going to lose all of my rights to the house. And in a divorce case or even in a custody case where both parties' names are on the house, moving out does not change ownership. What it does affect is your ability to possess the house or control the house. Advice I give often during these kinds of questions is it's a lot easier to keep the house if you're still in the house. It is much more difficult to convince a court that you should get to return to the house and kick the other party out of the house if you've already left. So the spouse who remains often controls access, the narrative of, quote, who left the house, and sometimes is the one who ends up paying, depending on the case. So if you leave the house, generally speaking, you should expect that your ability to return to the house is going to be minimal at best. And in high conflict cases, this can be a huge issue about returning back to the house. Judges are generally very reluctant in high conflict cases to allow that conflict to continue, especially if there's children. So it's just easier to keep the person who left the house out of the house. And even though you're not giving up your rights, even though the house may be divided in the future, the ability to get back into the house once you leave becomes very, very, very difficult.
Thank you for your input. It kind of sounds to me like the smart thing, if you want to have a stake in the house and possibly custody, is to stay, as unfortunate as that might be. I'd like to move on to our next question. Does leaving the home have financial consequences people might not expect?
Oh, absolutely. If you leave the house and you're the one who's been paying for all of the expenses, you may end up paying for two households and covering expenses that you didn't anticipate. You may end up having to contribute to the mortgage of the house. So even though you moved out, maybe say you're renting another house or you're renting an apartment, the court may still expect you to contribute to the mortgage on a marital residence because that benefits your community. And so early financial decisions like I'm going to move out because I just can't take it with this person, those can lead to pretty significant financial consequences that tend to snowball in a divorce case. So it is super important before you leave the house, talk to a lawyer, get some legal advice, find out, does this make sense? What are my risks if I move out?
Well, it really goes over my head. It seems like there's just a lot of contributing factors to think about. You have custody, the house itself, and even the financial implications. It goes without saying that your best bet is to seek legal advice tailor-made to your circumstances so that you get exactly what you need. But is there ever a case when maybe moving out is the right move?
For sure, moving out can be the right choice depending on your specific circumstance. So again, we always talk about safety, and safety has to be paramount. If you are facing a situation that is unsafe, domestic violence, protective orders, moving out may be necessary for your safety or the safety of the children, and that is absolutely paramount. A house is just a house. Your safety cannot be replaced. And so if it is unsafe, you absolutely cannot stay in the house. You have to go. Document it if that is the case, for sure. If there's holes in the walls, if there's stuff that's smashed, you want photos, you want video, those kind of things. But your safety has to be paramount. And again, talking to an attorney, talking to a victim advocate or a therapist may be helpful to help time that move out and make sure that it's safe. Again, it is the most unsafe when somebody leaves. That is generally speaking right afterwards where it is the most unsafe. And so if you are in a violent circumstance or in a domestic violence situation, talk to an advocate, talk to a therapist, talk to law enforcement, and talk to an attorney about what your options look like.
Yeah, there are resources available that an attorney can help you obtain, like a temporary protection order or even a restraining order. But if there's a threat to your safety, you need to seek legal advice immediately, or even possibly the help of law enforcement. I'd like to take it on to our next question. Some people think moving out makes you look cooperative or mature. Does that help them in court?
This is one of the biggest myths we get when we do consultations. That idea that if I move out, it's going to show the court that I'm reasonable, the other person is unreasonable, I left because they're so unreasonable, and that is just such a huge myth. The reality is judges don't reward sacrifice. It's think, well, you're the nice guy, you moved out, you're the better person. They look at the facts, and the facts are that you are the one that moved out. Being nice doesn't outweigh creating instability or reducing your involvement with the children or creating a financial vacuum because you moved out thinking you're not going to pay for that household. What courts look at is consistency, involvement, and compliance with orders. And if you've moved out with the idea that you're showing the court you're the bigger person, that may end up coming back to bite you later on. So again, it's super important to get legal advice before you decide to move out. Courts may not reward your sacrifice of moving out of the home.
It sounds like a tricky situation all around. If one of our listeners is thinking about moving out before filing, what's your advice to them?
Yeah, if you are thinking about moving out before a case is filed or before your divorce is final, I would just tell you first, take a breath. Again, unless you're in one of those situations that is unsafe, you should definitely pause, talk to a lawyer, especially one who does family law. If you're in Nevada, definitely talk to a Nevada family law attorney. Understand what your financial implications are, understand what those custody implications are, because this is one of those decisions at the very beginning of a case that can actually shape how the entire divorce goes. And so it is super important to understand your rights, to understand what it means if you move out of the home, if it's really necessary. What does custody look like if that happens? What are your financial obligations if that happens? So definitely talk to a lawyer. Try not to be impulsive. Try to think about it and plan it before you do it.
So the takeaway for me is it's best to talk to a lawyer first. Each situation is unique. What may work for somebody else might not work for you. Moving out before filing for divorce may not be the right choice if you have children or maybe a stake in your house, and it could even impact your case negatively.
Exactly. And in high conflict divorces especially, these early decisions tend to lead towards long-term consequences. So again, cannot stress enough, under these circumstances, please, please, please speak to an attorney. Get that legal advice up front before you move out. Have a lawyer explain to you again the custody implications, the financial implications, the ability to move back into the house at a later date. Understand your rights. Even if you're dead set on going, just understand what it looks like for you over the long term.
Thank you again for being here, Molly. Your insight is always appreciated. If you're ever thinking about a divorce and unsure of what to do next, informed decisions matter. You can learn more about working with Molly Rosenblum and her team at rosenblumlawlv.com. That is ROSENBLUMLAWLV.com. Remember to like, subscribe, and send this episode to somebody you think might need it. We'll see you next Tuesday on The Difficult Divorce. Thank you for listening.
You've been listening to The Difficult Divorce. Follow, review, and share if this helped cut through the noise. Find more tools and real talk on our website at rosenblumlawlv.com. And be sure to tune back in for the next episode. Because in divorce, what you don't know will cost you.